name is Jennifer Smith Parker, Director of Insights at Biospace, and you're listening to Denatured. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Thierry, Managing Partner at Kurma Partners, and Ksenija Pavletic, Partner and Chief Commercial Officer at Jeito Capital. We dive into France's biotech ecosystem, exploring what's driving its momentum, how science and capital are coming together to support company building, and what still needs to happen for more early innovation to translate into investable, scalable biotech. Thank you, Thierry, and thank you, Ksenija, for appearing on this episode of Denatured, where we're going to be discussing European financing and particularly honing in on France for this episode. So if you can introduce yourselves, that would be great. Thierry, we'll go ahead and start with you.
So I'm Thierry Laugel. By background, I was educated as a scientist. I'm pharmacist and pharmacologist. I'm currently in charge of Kurma Partners that I have co-founded 16 years ago. I'm managing partner there. So my profession is a venture capital investor for a long time in the European setting.
Perfect. Ksenija, if you can go ahead and take off.
So nice to meet you. My name is Ksenija, and I'm also a scientist by training. I'm actually an engineer by background. I am an ex-operator. I spent all my professional life, first of all, working in a big pharma, always in more business roles. Then I went into the startup world, where I was the CEO of a women health company based out of Geneva. And I'm currently general partner at Jeito Capital.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off. Those are great introductions. So we're going to be honing in on France on this episode, and then its greater connection to the rest of the pan-European financing environment. So France's biggest advantage today is its quality of life, its quality of its science, or the fact that its ecosystem now has more ways to finance and de-risk early company building.
So quality of life for sure is great in France, but so it's actually both. It's a quality of science that has been, always extremely high in France, and we know that the French basic research in oncology, immunology, and virology is on par with some of the best countries and continents in the world. I would say what has changed in the last 5 to 10 years, it's everything around, and it's especially the ecosystem that was built around the science. We have a, Health Innovation 2030, the program that was initiative that was launched by the government, where they put, I believe, 7 billion behind that health science. And the mandate was to actually translate the pure science into something that is a lot more scalable, and create the ecosystem that can take the ideas from academia into biotech world. I think that what we've seen as a result, it's also the venture capitalist ecosystem growing in France, and having more and more funds able to significantly more finance some of these biotech companies that are coming out of the French science. Nevertheless, I think France, as much as the whole Europe, it's still at the beginning of this journey. I would say there is a lot more that we need to do in order to catch up with maybe some countries like in US that is getting closer to not just doing a great science, but actually doing great companies and delivering great products for the patients. And hand in hand with that goes also the talent that you can attract into France that is able to do that.
I can only confirm everything that was said.
Sure.
There has been this 2030 initiative that is definitely driven by the government as a long-term strategy planification, which is of course very important for this kind of industry building initiative in France, like in other countries. So it's definitely showcasing that France and French government put a priority on development of this industry. And this is because in France, just as it is in many other European countries, the potential for maintaining and developing the health tech and biotech industry is relatively good, or is very good. So it is even more strategically important for France and other European countries to bet on this industry and bet on the development of this industry that France is doing, hopefully the right way, and will continue to do so. And the quality of life is okay.
Indeed, that's the perfect way of saying it. So let me ask, when you're talking about the strength of the quality of science, how much of that biotech strength comes from institutions like Pasteur, INSERM, or university spinouts versus newer company building ecosystems?
I will have a bias because at Kurma we do a lot of academy spin-out. So this is really our know-how. But I would say statistically in our deal flow generation and our pipelines, most of company building are from academic origin. The real industry spin-out, asset spin-out from industry is a minority, a small minority. This may change with some mega trends like Chinese assets incorporation, which is obviously an important change in the environment today. But overall, in the past, we have mostly started companies from academic assets. And France and Europe in general offers a variety of high-quality science, which is large enough, broad enough, diversified enough to give us ample opportunities to start companies.
I mean, majority of the companies, actually, company creation is still coming out of academia, despite the fact that the healthcare industry in France, it's a very strong one. Now we have some of the lead companies, pharma companies in the world from France. The spin out from the industry, let's say, as a basis for creating a new companies is a minority for the moment.
Yeah, I'm hearing that with a number of the discussions I'm having in this series right now in Europe. So the spinouts from academia are incredibly strong. And I'm curious to plug that further, where Paris remains an obvious center, but how much real momentum are you seeing in hubs like Lyon or Marseille or the wider regions?
So yes, as you said, Paris is a hub, of course, but science can come from it. It's true in France and it's true in all Europe. And this creates the complexity and the wealth of this ecosystem, where there are lots of, I would say, hundreds of possible geographic origin for good science in Europe. So this adds a layer of complexity, because we just can't focus our efforts on the Oxford or Cambridge or Boston or San Francisco. We have to travel and meet many people, but it's actually part of the fun, and we're discovering new places every year. And we are surprised with excellent science from places that we didn't know just a year ago. So that's great. And this means also diversity in culture and diversity in scientific, in way to address science. So Europe has really something possibly different from US and from other countries as well, and China in particular today. So we have to understand better our strengths and differentiations to be stronger in the future.
I'm curious, when you're talking about just now focusing on what maybe France can do better in regard to the broader kind of investment landscape. You're saying not only talking about the US, but China and more of a global environment. And I'm wondering, is France at this point positioned to capture a bigger share of the biotech capital, or does it still need to prove it could consistently scale winners?
I think France is very well positioned to capture the bigger share of biotech capital. It's also on top of the excellent science that Thierry was also mentioning, I think that the matured a lot in terms of the some of the, I would say, institutional investors, some major institutional investors actually getting more and more aware and open to a healthcare, for example, including banks and some of the insurance companies. That is also thanks to the, the program France 2030. It's also thanks to the initiative of TB, Philippe TB, helped to raise the awareness of a healthcare and understanding of the healthcare industry among some of these major institutional investors, because it's very important to understand. Unlike in the US, France doesn't benefit from the direct pension fund allocations. So there is so there's a real need for the education and understanding of our industry and our business among some of these very, I would say, general institutional investors. And there, France has done a major shift in the last, I would say, 5 years. Second thing, I think beyond the science, what's also very strong in France, and we should not forget about it. I mean, France has an industry. You have Sanofi, you have Servier, you have Ipsen. I mean, you have, among the top 20 companies in the world, you have quite a few coming out of France. On a scale, it is a big country, but nevertheless, it's much smaller than the US, and you still have quite a strong healthcare industry here. So in terms of the, I would say, country effort, access to the capital, sophistication, growing sophistication of the investors, strong industry, strong science, all these ecosystems need to work together. There, I would say France has done a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my view, of course, it's not just because I'm sitting here in Paris, but my view in terms of looking it on a European scene, France is a leading country here, for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, that does make sense to me, especially as you're mentioning those 3 top companies right off the bat that are long-standing players within the pharmaceutical environment. So to drill down a bit more specifically on each of your funds here. So Thierry, Kurma, as you mentioned earlier, has long focused on building companies early. What does France still need to do, though, to turn more academic innovation into investable biotech?
To work hard, maybe.
It doesn't go well with the quality of life.
I will not enter into this debate. But working hard is obviously a good way to make it happen. And actually, it's only half a joke, because it's a matter of entrepreneurial efforts and energy spending. So I think if we look at the reservoir of academic assets and academic science or project available or potentially available in Europe, I have no statistics to share, but for me, it's obvious that we are in a relatively uncompetitive market. If we compare it to the US in particular, where high quality science is extremely competitive in terms of company creation. In Europe, good science is it's not necessarily seen as a reservoir for building companies. Good science is good science.
Interesting.
Is a reservoir for publications, good science discussions, debates, and etc. So the entrepreneurial efforts, energy, and spirit is different in Europe compared to the US, even though it's growing and changing gradually. But so working hard is again the real answer, because with more work and more entrepreneurial resources and efforts, we would just build more companies.
I'm also curious whether or tech transfer issues any part of that too, because I've heard that in some other European part of the series, part of this countries too, that sometimes a tech transfer network is a bit of a stumbling block in some countries. Is that at all the case in France?
I mean, Thierry, probably, I don't know, we have maybe similar views, maybe not. I think it can get better, because I think, when you discuss with the transfer office from a major academic institution in France, to spin out an idea out of the academia into a biotech, it takes you I think you're happy if you conclude the agreement within a year. If you go that to probably do it in 3 months. And after 1 year, the problem is that, these academic founders, they need to raise money, they need to attract capital. And when you drag negotiations for 1 year, everyone gets fatigued, including the investors, because we move on. I mean, we don't have time to wait for someone for 1 year to come out of academia with, I don't know which contract. So I think that efficiency and speed still can get better.
That's fair. Now, Ksenija, let me turn to you on that point. So with Jeito, so that was founded to address the capital gap at critical stage of 5 years on. And I'm curious here, with a 1 billion fund final close, so congratulations, and tripling that at AUM 1.6 billion, is that gap actually closing or just shifting later?
I think it's we would like to close it, but you need more than one. Jeito is not enough. So I would say when you look at in terms of the European funds, we account for 7% of the global market versus 60+% coming out of US, and actually 15% or close to 15 coming out of China. So we are half of what the China is. And in terms of science, we just spent, last 20 minutes talking about how great the science is. So I think that there, it's really, we need to get closer to close this gap, and that's exactly what Jeito has been set to do, because again, there is great science. There are phenomenal funds. For example, Kurma is one that are actually there in order to seed the companies, start the companies, etc. But when the companies have advanced further in the development, they are de-risked, but they need substantial amount of capital. And unfortunately, until now, and still, this is still the situation with Europe, there is a lack of this big access to the capital in Europe, and many companies have to go to the US. Once all the Europeans have taken the risk to create them. For us, this is exactly where what is the role of Jeito here. And our strategy is, with such a big fund, to deploy a significant amount of capital behind the companies that are delivering on the science. We can, for example, go up to 150 million per company, if this is the company. And this is exactly the amount of capital that one would need when you are further in the clinical development.
And speaking about that in a sense of the type of, as you said, capital that's needed as you progress. So Thierry, and for the final question today, so considering that Kurma has just closed the BioFund 4 at 250 million in a tougher fundraising environment, what does this final size indicate to you about investor appetite for early stage biotech right now?
It's an interesting question, because we celebrate it as a very nice event to have a 215 million euro final closing for BioFund 4. Again, it's a different positioning that Jeito, so very early stage, and probably for us is the right size for Europe. But many of the journalists who covered the news said that Kurma BioFund 4 missed the target of 250. Rather than seeing it as there is a nice fund, okay. Okay.
But that's a problem of Europe. The glass is always half empty.
That was my perception. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I think telling this anecdote is the way to answer your question, which is probably it's hard to raise money for early stage funds in Europe today. And I believe some of our colleagues are struggling to raise this kind of funds for good and bad reasons, because of course for early stage funds the financial return is relatively unpredictable. You add risk, so you hope you add return, but you add risk. So some people may be very averse to risk, and this is unfortunately what we may suffer on. So no, it's probably not easy to raise funds for early stage venture investments these days in Europe, but I don't know if it's much easier in other countries. I just returned from a long trip in China where they believe in progress, they believe in future, they invest heavily. But I met many people who just said me that venture investment returns in biotech is very chaotic, even though, of course, some funds are performing extremely well, but by definition, it's a risky business.
But I'm going to end at an optimistic point because you said there's great science, there's great quality of life, there's a lot of potential. We are seeing both Kurma and Jeito really investing into the ecosystem here. So there's a lot of potential for keep on building on the great science. So thank you so much, Thierry, and thank you so much, Ksenija, for joining this episode of Denatured. If you'd like to listen to more episodes, please turn into biospace.com.